everybody, my name is Mars. You can call me MG if you would like, and today I have for you my December reading wrap-up. I have 19 books to talk about with you guys today, so why don't we just get into it. The first book that I picked up was Bloodleaf by Crystal Smith. I picked this up at a library book sale not too long ago, like it was in November, so it was on my shelf for a very short amount of time, and I thought this was okay. It wasn't great. There are some world building elements that I feel like weren't cohesive with each other, if that makes sense. I thought it was fine though, like there's nothing egregiously wrong with it. I'm torn on if I'm going to continue the series because there are two more books. If I can find them easily, I might continue on, but I'm not gonna like go out of my way to read them, you know? I do love this cover. The silver on it is so beautiful, so I wish I enjoyed it a little bit more because it does have such a beautiful cover, but overall I didn't hate it, I just didn't love it. Then I picked up a book that I did love though, and that was The Novice by Taran Matharu. This book was everything that I needed in that moment. It was so good. I loved it so much. This has like high fantasy vibes with the different fantasy races, so like orcs and dwarves and elves, and I just didn't realize how much I was missing that type of fantasy until I read this. I was like, dang, this is amazing. It also has like demon summoning and a magic school, which are two things that I love. And our main character is a very classic protagonist for a fantasy novel. You know, he's orphaned, he's on the run from his hometown after something happens. He accidentally summons a demon, as one does. But it was an absolutely amazing time. I will be continuing on with this series 100%, and I will also be reading every other book that Taran Matharu has because I was just hooked on this, and I trust Taran Matharu to write a good book, even though I've only read the one, so I might be like getting a little ahead of myself here, but it's fine. I love this that much. Then I picked up The Aosawa Murders by Riku Onda, and this was translated by Allison Watts, and I thought this was fun. It wasn't as much my personal taste in books as Riku Onda's other work that I read earlier this year, Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight. I loved that book. This one was a bit too involved, you know? Both works have like a lot of little plot threads and like puzzle pieces that come together, and like information is revealed very like methodically. I just feel like the actual story in Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight was more enjoyable to me personally than the Asawa Murders. This was still very interesting. I still would love to read more from Riku Onda, so hopefully I can in the future. After that, I read Animal Farm by George Orwell, and this surprised me completely. I loved it. When I tell you that my jaw was on the floor, I did not expect to enjoy this as much as I did. I never read it in school or anything. This was my first time picking it up, and I was just shocked. It was so good. I love the writing style and the story, both from an entertainment perspective and like a moral perspective, I guess, because this is satire. It is meant to like expose something of society, and I think it's done so well. And I was extra surprised by how much I enjoyed this because I am not the biggest fan of 1984 by George Orwell. I thought that book was just okay, but Animal Farm, truly a shock. I loved this book. The next book I read was Ruin Song by Julia Ember. I really enjoy this cover. I'm not usually a fan of people on the cover, but I feel like this art style really does it for me. There's also the back with the two girls, and this was another book that was just okay. Like there was nothing wrong with it. It just didn't hit the way I wanted it to. So this book is sapphic and there's like song magic, but I feel like that magic system wasn't really like fleshed out, maybe is what I'm trying to say. I don't really know. There was just something missing from this book that just didn't really give me everything I wanted from it. But I do think that the character work was pretty fun and the world building was fun, so it wasn't terrible, it just didn't give me everything that I wanted from it. And then we had another book that didn't give me everything that I wanted, and that was A Song Beyond Walls by S. Escobar. And this is so short, it's only like 60 something pages. I read it in like an hour, and it was so good for what it was, but it left me wanting so much more. This is a story about a man who buys a house, and there's a ghost in the house, and they fall in love. And I love that concept. It just was so short that it didn't give me time to actually like care about the characters, you know? Like it was so beautifully written. I loved the way it was on the page. I just wish it was a longer work. Maybe not a full-length novel, but like a novella at least, because this was really just a short story. It wasn't that long at all, and I just wanted more from it. After that, I read 3 books by Rebecca Ross all in a row, and I'm glad I read them in the order that I did because they just kept getting better and better. So the first one I read was The Queen's Rising, and this really felt like a go girl, give us nothing moment to me. Like a couple of other books I've talked about, it wasn't bad, it just didn't really give me what I wanted out of it. This was just a very bland book to me, and I feel so bad saying that, but like truly I didn't connect to this in any way, but I also didn't hate any of the elements of it. So I'm conflicted because it wasn't bad, but it really wasn't good either, and I'm just sad about that. Then I read A River Enchanted, which was definitely a step up, and it made me realize that I wasn't being too harsh about The Queen's Rising because it was just so much better. I liked the characters a lot more, I liked the world building a lot more, I liked the romance a lot more. The romance in The Queen's Rising was so basic and like kind of just like, oh, I guess these characters are into each other without actually showing us on the page. But with The River Enchanted, we can actually see the characters like being interested in each other, you know? And I also just enjoy the like magic system. I thought that was a lot more interesting, and the ending, I need to read the next one so soon because the ending is so tense. It's wild, you guys. I cannot believe it ended that way and that it had that cliffhanger, but it's fine. We'll get to the second one soon. The true star of the show, though, when it came to reading Rebecca Ross's books, was Divine Rivals. Spoiler alert, this was my favorite book of the entire year. Genuinely, I was I was obsessed with this from the start. So this follows Iris, who is a like reporter for this newspaper, and she's got this rival at the newspaper who's this like rich guy. He's always got everything he wants, and she's over here struggling. Her brother is fighting in this war between these gods that have woken up, and her mother is having health issues, and just this dichotomy between the two of them is so good. And then they fall in love, of course, because it's divine rivals. Obviously, the rivals are gonna fall in love. And I thought the depictions of war and grief are just so well done. We know I love a book about grief. It was amazing. And like A River Enchanted, the ending, like, oh my god, I need to pick up the next one so soon. I actually vlogged the 3 of these books together, and I plan on doing a second part of that vlog where I finish out the duologies, although I really don't know what's going to happen in the sequel to The Queen's Rising, because it was like a fully contained story. Like, it doesn't need a sequel, but it has one. So, I don't know, but I hope to get to that soon because I really just want to know what happens in the rest of these series, or at least 2 out of the 3. It's fine. We're just gonna move on. After Divine Rivals, I needed a book that was very low stakes, one that wasn't gonna break my heart again, so I picked up Percy Jackson's Greek Gods, and this is just a story collection telling the Greek myths, and like specifically ones about the gods, because there is a version called Greek Heroes, but like they're told as if Percy Jackson, the character, is telling the stories, and it was just so cute, so fun. I did read this physically, but then I gave my copy to my friend Zach because it was a gigantic coffee table book, and it just upset me to look at it because it was so huge. I'm like, I don't want to own this, so I'm glad that I read it, but I'm also glad that it is out of my house. After that, I picked up a manga, and that was 5 centimeters per second, which is created by Makoto Shinkai, who is the same person that did Weathering with You and Your Name. And I was very disappointed by this. It did not give me the same feelings as Weathering with You and Your Name. Overall, it just kind of was bland, like some other things that I've read this month, but I just didn't get what I wanted out of it, so I'm just gonna forget about that one and stick to the ones that I really like by this creator. After that, I continued my reread of the Vampire Academy series with the book 2, which is called Frostbite, and it was the perfect time of year to read that because this takes place in the winter over like Christmas break. The students go to this like ski lodge, and this was so fun. It wasn't as good as the first one in my opinion, but I still had a good time with it. They are quick and easy to read. They're super fast paced. This is my current like don't think too hard about it series because boy is it flawed, but it's super fun. So I'm just letting myself enjoy this and I'm excited to continue on. The next book I picked up was The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin, and I DNF'd this after the prologue. It was literally 18 pages in, and I'm like, no thank you. It just, the writing was not it. It was very bizarre the way we opened this story. So this is a story, let me give you the premise first. A story about 4 siblings who meet this woman when they are children who supposedly tells them the day that they're gonna die, and then it's going to follow them in the decades after and the lives that they live. The prologue is them meeting the woman, but it opens up talking about the 13-year-old sibling, the oldest of them, and how she's like developing breasts and like going through puberty and stuff. And I'm like, why are we talking about a 13-year-old's body this way? Why are we opening the novel with this description? Like, it just felt so unnecessary and like set me on like a weird vibe for the whole thing. So I'm like, after getting through the prologue, I was like, I don't think this is the story for me. So I DNF'd it, and this is going to go out of my house. Then I read Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. I have this lovely cover. It's so much better than the one with the person on it. Like I said, not a fan of people on the covers with some exceptions. And I got this at the same library book sale as Bloodleaf. So again, reading things as they come into my collection. Who would have thought that was possible? But I enjoyed this. I think I liked the premise more than the execution, but this is Carrie Maniscalco's debut novel, so I'm assuming that her other works get better with time, and so I am continuing on with the series. If I could speak English, that'd be great. But this is a story that takes place in the 1880s in London, and our main character, Audrey Rose, wants to study forensic science, which is something she can't really do as a woman in that time, but she does it anyway, and it's just so fun. The romance in this is very 2014 YA, which, like, this was published in 2014 and it's YA, so it's understandable, but I'm still very much looking forward to seeing where this goes. This is a 4-book series, I believe, and I was under the impression that this was fantasy. It apparently isn't. I looked on Goodreads, and it's all just categorized as historical mystery, so I just really thought that there were fantasy elements. I mean, the second book is called Hunting Prince Dracula, but I guess it's like historical Dracula and not fictional Dracula. I thought we were going to get vampires, and we didn't, which is a little bit disappointing, but that is on me for not properly looking into this book before picking it up. So, yeah, that was a really fun book. Not the best, but I still enjoyed my time with it. Hopefully I can get the other books in this edition. I don't know if they've been published yet because this edition of this first book only came out a couple of months ago, so I really lucked out there. But regardless, I will be continuing on with the series at some point in time. Then I picked up Castle of the Cursed by Romina Garber, and this is another book where all of the different world building elements didn't quite come together in a way that made sense to me. Like, it was a lot of really fun stuff. I just didn't see how the pieces made the picture as a whole, if that makes sense. It was fine. I think the characters were kind of annoying, and that definitely bumped it down a couple notches for me because I am, first and foremost, a character-driven reader. I can forgive world building and plot weaknesses if the characters are very well written. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case here. This is not a series, so I don't have to decide if I'm going to continue on or not. It was a complete standalone. The ending, though, this pulled one of my least favorite things in a book, where you have the whole resolution and everything, and then at the very end, the last sentence, the literal last thing any character says, makes it like flipped on its head. So I'm not going to give spoilers, but basically, there is one character who is called one thing by our main character and one thing by another person, and you think that it's the main character and this guy at the end, but then the very last thing is the main character calling this guy the thing that the other person would call him. So you're like, oh, is it this person all along? I hate that, guys. I really, really hate that. Like, just let the book end. Like, you don't need to flip it around. It's fine. But yeah, I didn't hate this book, but I didn't love it. After that, I finally got to Paradiso by Dante Alighieri, the third and final book in the Divine Comedy. So this giant, chunky bind-up could come off of my TBR cart where it's been living for months and finally go on the shelf. So Paradiso is just like the last third of this. And it's for sure my least favorite section of the Divine Comedy. I think Inferno is my favorite, and then Purgatory, and then Paradise, but it was still really good. I do really enjoy the Longfellow translation, although I am interested in reading other translations. I think that would be a lot of fun. But yes, this feels like a major accomplishment to finally getting this done, so I am so glad that I read it. The next book that I picked up was The Little Prince, and I listened to this as an audiobook for the Nostalgia Train book club. That was the pick for December, and I had no idea what this story was going into it, and it was so bizarre. Like, I genuinely didn't expect any of the things that happened to happen, but I am still glad that I read it, so it was a fun time. And at the time of this video going out, the talk for the book has already happened, but for me, it's happening tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to doing that. The next book I read was The Nutcracker by E.T.A. Hoffmann. This technically also has The Golden Pot, but I didn't read that. I just skipped to The Nutcracker, which it says The Nutcracker and The Golden Pot on the cover, but then The Golden Pot is first and The Nutcracker is second, and that kind of bothers me, but that's so nitpicky. But I figured it was the perfect time to read The Nutcracker, being Christmassy, and I thought this was so fun and so cute. I know the story of the Nutcracker based on, I guess, the movie or the ballet or whatever that storyline is, and this is a little bit different than what I knew from that. So it was interesting to see the different changes that were made, because apparently this is the original Nutcracker, and then Alexandre Dumas, the author of The Three Musketeers, like, made a retelling of it, I guess. Like, he wrote his version of the Nutcracker, and that's the version that the ballet and the movie and everything are based on. So that was very interesting to learn. But yeah, it was fun. It was really cute. I read it on Christmas Eve, and it was just so delightful. And then finally, we come to the last book that I read in December, and therefore the last book that I read in 2024, and it was The Blood of Olympus by Rick Riordan. This was just the perfect final book. It was a reread of a book that I knew I loved. It closed out my reread of the Percy Jackson / Heroes of Olympus series, and it was perfect. That's all I can say. It was just so good, and I cried, and I'm gonna sue Rick Riordan for emotional damage, but that's an understandable thing. But now I'm all caught up, so I can read the latest Percy books that have been coming out the past couple of years that I didn't get to because I wanted to reread these, and now that I've reread them, I can get to them. But yeah, I really picked a good one for the last book. And technically, at the time I'm filming this, it's the 29th, and I finished this yesterday, so there are a few days left in the year. I could read a couple more books, probably. Maybe not a couple, maybe just one. But I'm calling it here. I'm going to give myself the last few days off from reading so that I can start fresh on January 1st with a new book. And, I'm glad that this is the one that gets to stay with me for the next few days. So those are all of the books that I came here to talk to you guys about today, and perfect timing because my cat is now meowing at the door. She wants to hang out. but I want to close this out, obviously. Let me know what books you guys read in December and what your favorite ones were. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!